Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast from still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me down there in Tequila, Georgia, my good friend, fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It's good to be back with you. It's a big week. Juice is flowing this week. I'm excited.
Is there a big game?
Big time game. And, I think the Falcons have the Saints also this weekend. So, just big time. Not that, I mean, that's like a touchy point for some Georgia fans, like not wanting to acknowledge Alabama as a rival. Like, whatever, call it what you want. It's like UConn, Tennessee, women basketball. It's like, it wasn't a rivalry either. But at some point, if you're just playing for so many trophies against each other all the time, like at some point it's a rivalry.
It is a rivalry. Like, who's saying that it's not a rivalry? Are there Georgia fans doing that?
Maybe because, you don't want to talk about that record against Alabama in recent years, but it doesn't have a name. I know is one thing people have brought up. But it's not one of the traditional rivalries like a Georgia Tech, Florida, Auburn. Like, I think they played like twice, 2 or 3 times in the 90s, like 2 or 3 times in the 80s. Like, they just weren't teams that played each other every year. So no SEC championship until 92. So there wasn't just a long history. Like, there are obviously 2 states in the Southeast that are touching each other, so none of those states, none of those schools like each other. But I don't know. It's definitely a rivalry at this point.
It is, and let's not overthink it. And also embrace it if you're a Georgia fan. Why would you push against that? Like, yeah, you're in a rivalry with the best program of the 21st century.
There's
Why
also
are you pushing
the
back
argument that it's not a rivalry until it's like, at least Georgia starts winning some more games. Like, what is it, 8-1 in the last 9? I think.
They don't
Georgia
play that
Alabama.
often though. I guess maybe that's part of it. But the other part of it too is like, I don't know. You'll obviously never catch Saban's 7 national titles. Like, I think Georgia fans, even the most realistic one, to like, yeah, Kirby's not catching 7. But part of it is just CFP expansion. Like, it's just different. Like, there's just more variables. I think it's gonna be harder to win multiple times. Like, you're not gonna have the same record that Saban had at Alabama just because. This year alone that we're talking about, like Georgia going to Ole Miss, going to Alabama, going to Texas, and also getting Tennessee at home. So it's just we talked about it on last week's show. It's a murderer's row for the Dogs, and it starts here in Tuscaloosa. So we'll get into that here on this week's Week 5 college football preview show here on a pod divided. Matt Green. But before we dive into our Week 5 picks, you had something on Cade Klubnik that I thought was pretty interesting. So what do you have on Klubnik?
I did, sir, and I don't know if you saw that sexy graphic I put out there on Twitter.
Graphic design is your passion, Matt Green.
I created that myself. I was pretty proud of that. But I was just thinking, because we were talking last week about or I think I mentioned this Clemson team starting to remind me of 2022 Oregon. And then it's like, but Cade Klubnik isn't Bo Nix, I think is what you said. And it's like, wait, I'm not so sure he's not Bo Nix. Because I started looking into the data, and it was a couple evenly matched teams too. So you could kind of work with it. So Bo Nix, the 2 games after, to refresh everybody's memory, Oregon lost to Georgia 49-3, the season opener in 2022. Clemson lost to Georgia 34-3 to open up this season in Mercedes-Benz. The 2 games after that, and then everyone wrote both teams off like, oh, these teams are terrible. But then they started putting up some serious points. And I was like, okay, well, maybe Georgia's just legit, and these teams are good, just not on Georgia's level. And so the next 2 games after that blowout to Georgia, Bo Nix went 41-51, and we can throw those graphics up on the screen. Probably make it easier to follow. But 41-51, 499 yards, 7 touchdowns, no picks, 53 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, and that's versus Eastern Washington and BYU. Cade Klubnik versus App State and NC State goes 40-50 for 587 yards, 8 touchdowns, no picks, 75 rush yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. Just almost identical numbers against kind of comparable competition as well. So I'm curious, Bo Nix ended up having 14 rushing touchdowns on the season, like completed, I think he led the nation in completion percentage, like 71% or something that year. I think Klubnik's sitting at like 73 right now. So It's I'll be interested to see what Cade Klubnik does the rest of the way. I think a lot of people were leaving Clemson for dead after week 1, and now Miami I think still is the sexy pick. I think that's who everyone likes in the ACC, but I think Clemson and Miami are right there on just a collision course for the ACC championship and that top 4 seed in the college football playoff.
You're holding out on the Clemson thing. That's fine. I'll let you hold out there, Matt Green. Let me just say, like going back through our preseason predictions too, I'm feeling really good about my Cam Ward Heisman pick here, Matt Green. Like that I think he's right now in the driver's seat.
Well, and let's be fair, like 2022 Bo Nix was not the Heisman finalist. Like he put up just some absurd numbers in 2023. Oregon was not quite the same team. They were a 10-3 team, probably finished 10th or so in the polls. Like they were a really good competitive college football team. They just weren't the elite of the elite. And I think Clemson, we overreact to Dabo Swinney's portal strategy and everything like that, and how conservative and kind of traditional he is, when it comes to his approach to college football and not adapting to the times. But I think in the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised if Clemson is still, the 10th ranked team at the end of the country, at the end of the season, 10th, 12th, or something like that. Like I think this team's going to probably win double-digit games, and maybe because they're good, and maybe because the ACC is just kind of whatever, and their schedule doesn't look like a murderer's row from this point on.
I mean, I don't think the ACC is whatever. I think it's just bad, and also, I think it's not even an overreaction. Like it's just a reaction, and the reaction is it's bad team building strategy in 2024. Like it's not an overreaction to be like Clemson's 10th. They could be 7th or 6th if they utilize the portal. Like there is a way.
They could be winning national championships. That's what they were doing before they decided to draw a line in the sand for whatever reason, for arbitrary reason, and not go after players from the portal.
Absolutely. Well, Matt Green, where do things stand going into week 5 here in our picks and predictions, sir?
Going into week 5, I am 16-32-1 against the spread, sir. Not my best work. I should have left that at the end, to be honest. You were 21-27-1 against the spread this year. So, I think not to the standard that you would like, but still respectable. And then we were both tied overall, sir. 31-18 on the season. And then Zeus with his home dog of the week, he is 2-3 so far to begin 2024.
Shout out to Zeus. Hope he's feeling the love this week, Matt Green, after getting chastised on this very program for stealing a chicken tendy. Maybe he'll bounce back if you believe in him a little bit more on today's show with his home dog of the week. Maybe he might not go after the tendies because, hey, he's feeling more confident. He's feeling more respected, more loved in the Green household because all he sees is chicken tendies all the time and none for Zeus. None for Zeus.
Oh, he eats well, sir. You better believe that.
Well, Matt Green, let's start with the game of the weekend, game that I'm very happy is happening on a week that Tennessee is on a bye week, sir, so I can fully immerse myself in Alabama, Georgia on Saturday. Alabama hosting the Dogs and our 2-point home dogs. Are you going to go with the Bama Crimson Tide as your Zeus home dog of the week? Do you have it in you? Do you have that in you, Matt Green?
Sir. They are definitely a dangerous home dog this week. So these are massive stakes in this game. But I feel like at times it's being overstated if that's possible. So for Kalen DeBoer, I think I've heard a lot of people say like Alabama's kind of playing with house money. Like no one really expects them to win this game. I don't think Alabama knows how to play with house money. Like we say that until they lose a game and they're calling it a fine bomb and melting down. So obviously the pressure is not there on Kalen DeBoer. It's year 1, whatever. If Kalen DeBoer is able to win this game, it absolutely, I think it just kind of turbo boosts what he's building at Alabama, because I think people have already been surprised by how good he's been on the recruiting trail. So now, I mean, if you don't miss a beat when it comes to Georgia, like I think that's just massive, because to the house money argument, like if Alabama loses this game, it's not, no one's calling for Kalen DeBoer's job or any kind of narrative that he can't beat Georgia or something like that. So from that perspective, I agree. but it's still just massive if DeBoer is able to just kind of not miss a beat. Because in most situations, it feels like the first year head coach, like this isn't the game he wins. Even though there's most coaches are never taking over a program as good as Alabama, but it just feels like, okay, it's going to be exciting for 4 quarters, but they looked good, but it was, this is a really good team. We'll wait for him to get his players, yada yada yada, his system going, and then that's when we'll judge him. So I understand that argument, but from Kirby Smart's perspective, obviously, I push back on the Georgia has to get over the Alabama hump narrative, because I think it's the Nick Saban hump. It's like how many coaches had success against Nick Saban? Like I went in. They lost 23 games in the final 16 years of Nick Saban's tenure. So I just left out 2007, because there was a lot of teams that got Alabama in 2007. But you just look at what he did against everyone. He went 15-1 against Tennessee, 8-1 versus Florida, 13-4 versus LSU. Auburn is someone we feel like always played Alabama well. He went 12-4 versus Auburn, and also 8-1 versus Georgia in that final 16 years. So Nick Saban was doing this to everybody. So I don't think that Georgia has some sort of kryptonite that is Alabama. Like, I think it's just Nick Saban was the best that's ever done it. And yeah, it was tough to beat him. So I think that narrative could exist if Kirby Smart loses this game. And okay, now it doesn't matter who's coaching. Kirby just can't beat Alabama. He obviously has the one win, but to this point, he's 1-5 against Alabama. And so tell me what you think about this. There's this notion that Georgia never took over the SEC. Like this is like they beat Alabama one time and became national champions, but they never dethroned them. And I just think that's false. Like, I don't think Kirby has to beat Alabama to somehow dethrone Alabama. Like, you look at the last 3 years of college football, who do you think Alabama fans would rather have? Would they rather have Georgia's resume over the last 3 years, or would they rather have Alabama's resume? You're a Tennessee fan. Would Tennessee rather do what Georgia's done the last 3 years and win one conference title and 2 national championships? Or what Alabama's done and win 2 conference titles with no national championships? Like, I think it's pretty easy, right?
Yeah, I think the problem, though, is it was short-lived because Saban's out. It was 2 years. It didn't feel, I think, like you said, because of Kirby's record against Alabama, it didn't feel like they had taken it. And part of it is just they haven't played them. And then you have LSU in the SEC title game in 2022 and blow out LSU. And part of it, I think, too, is, like I said, like Georgia had the 2-year window, and then you missed the CFP altogether because you lost to Bama last year in the SEC title game that everybody watched, and it just never felt like you just need time. Like, time was not Georgia's friend. Like, if you had Saban at Alabama for 3 more years and Kirby's here at Georgia for 3 more years, then I think the narrative probably would have naturally changed. But because it was so short and now Saban's out, like it will never feel like that, and the narrative will never be that Georgia took over the reins from Alabama and this was their conference. Even though I agree with you that those 2 years, everyone, even Bama fans, would rather have that, but they're just gonna be like, we have the titles, like we have the longevity. And
but I mean, the last 3 years, like 3 years is a large.
I wouldn't even say 3 though. That's the thing, is like they won last year and then they went to the CFP and Georgia didn't. So I'm saying they advanced further than the Dogs,
but they didn't win a national title.
No, but I'm just saying Bama fans would say, even with all the craziness and the insanity of the 2023 Alabama Crimson Tide and finding their way with just the Hail Mary against Auburn to even survive to get to that spot and all that. All I'm saying is Kirby just didn't have enough time. Like, it was just because it was a short window that Georgia did pass Alabama that it doesn't feel like it was set in stone that they were the premier program. You just need years. You need time. Because LSU's never felt like that. LSU's had the blips. Like, LSU will win their title, and then they fall off for another 5 years, and then, there's LSU, best team in college football again, and then they're gone. It's just, I don't know. I think you just need time, and people will just reflexively be like, well, it didn't feel like they really took it away from Alabama. It's not. They were in the college football playoff last year, and they were, like, you know what I mean? It's never going to feel like that to Bama fans and to national folks when they look at the two programs. But that's why I think,
like you're saying, like LSU, like they had their teams that would do it, but the program never was better than Alabama at any time. like, I think that's what 2023 was personally. I think the Alabama team, found a way to beat Georgia, but I don't feel like Alabama's program is better than Georgia. And even with this 3-year sample size of the last 3 years, like, I think Georgia has been, 42-2 with 2 national titles compared to 36-6 with 0 national titles. Like, those are pretty big differences in the grand scheme of college football. So, that's neither here nor there, but that's just, I feel like, the narratives that are kind of surrounding this game. But when I first started looking into this game, because look, I'm not making any excuses about the 2023 SEC championship game to start off with, but I think there's this narrative that Alabama dominated Georgia physically and just kind of like, asserted their will, and Jalen Milroe has we could see defeat in their face or something like that. Like, they won by 3 points, right? And it wasn't like they just ran. Like, the last 2 drives of the game, Alabama had 38% of their rushing offense, or for 38% of their entire offense was in those final 2 drives, and 51% of their rush offense was in the final 2 drives of that game. So you can say, like, when Alabama needed to get it done, like, they got it done at the end of the game and ran the clock out, and they definitely ran the ball on Georgia to put the game away. But in the second half of that game, I mean, Georgia had 5 second half drives in the SEC championship last year, scored 2 touchdowns, a field goal, 1 punt, and then 1 just blunder where you have the fumble on the handoff to Dylan Bell that gives Alabama the ball on the 11-yard line. Like, Alabama scored 10 points in the second half, and 3 of it was on just a gift on a drive that started at Georgia's 10-yard line. So I think there's this narrative that Alabama was just a lot more physical, and I don't really think that was true. I think they just kind of, and it was like Jalen Milroe made all the plays when he needed to. It's like, he definitely made some plays, but Alabama was 3 of 13 on third down in that game. He had 29 yards rushing. Georgia got 4 sacks in the game. So the game was a lot more evenly played than I think Georgia kind of gets credit for. I think one of the biggest differences, we talked about Jalen Walker played 12 snaps in that game, had 2 sacks in the game, and I feel like he was the key to keeping Jalen Milroe under wraps, and I just don't know why he didn't play as much as he did. Jamon Dumas-Johnson was injured the last few weeks of the Georgia season, and you were playing 2 true freshmen, and granted, C.J. Allen was a stud true freshman, and Raylan Wilson super highly ranked, but I think that was one of the biggest differences. Was just having that inexperience with Georgia's linebackers in the SEC championship a year ago, and you saw the busted coverage on the Jam Miller touchdown, that just Jalen Milroe getting away a few times. I think this Georgia linebacking core is just so damn fast. I think that's going to be the key if you can limit Jalen Milroe, because they did sack him 4 times a year ago, and I think this Georgia, especially if you get Mykel Williams and Warren Brinson back, which you're supposed to for this game. Like, I think that's going to be the X factor in just containing Jalen Milroe.
But we have to throw out so much of last year, just because last year it was Nick Saban, it was Tommy Rees. It's a very different system. Like, Kalen DeBoer and Jalen Milroe, it's just going to look different. It's going to feel different. The defense is going to be different with Kane Womack and Maurice Linguist and everybody else. Like, there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen on that Alabama defense. But I just look at this game, and in terms, like, we've already talked big picture here and just where the programs are at, this, that, and the other. I think it helps, obviously, that Bama's at home here. That will play a pivotal role, I think, in this ball game. I wonder what the line would be if this was in Athens. My gut would be it'd be like Georgia -7.5 would be my guess. So this is huge. This is a coin flip game because it's in Tuscaloosa, but Georgia's still favored. The Dogs are 46th in passing yards per attempt. They're 88th in first downs total a game right now. They're 98th in long scrimmage plays of 10 plus yards. UGA is a 79th in their passing grade as a whole per PFF. They're 9th though in pass blocking. So the pass blocking has been there. They just haven't had guys get open, or Carson Beck. I think Carson Beck was objectively just not good against Kentucky 2 weeks ago. But on the flip side, Bama is 50th in pass block grade. So to your point with Walker, and if we'll see what Mykel Williams looks like, Jordan Hall, if he's able to go, and Georgia's front seven, I think, will overload this Alabama offensive line. So that's a plus for the Dogs. Georgia also 72nd in receiving grade, but Bama 11th in rush defense, and I think Georgia's going to want to run the ball. And I think a lot of people just are kind of curious how Bama, in this post-Saban defensive world, how are they going to handle the Dogs? To this point, Bama's front seven is doing pretty well. And I think Georgia's going to want to win on the road is they're going to want to establish the run. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that against Alabama. I don't know if Etienne and Brazier and what that rotation is going to look like for Georgia. I'm curious what that looks like. Everything to me just screams this is going to be low scoring. I would hit the under on this game. I think both teams are going to be trying not to make a mistake. I don't think Kalen DeBoer wants Jalen Milroe to put the ball in harm's way and run for his life and just get over his skis a little bit against the best front seven he'll probably face before. I would still take Tennessee's front seven over Georgia's right now, but I think to this point, you kind of want to see what you have in Jalen Milroe. This is a huge spot for him to see how much he's evolved and changed from last season. This is also a Heisman game, right? Whoever loses this game, the Heisman odds take a big hit, I think, in this one. But I'd
say Milroe more than Beck, just because Beck's got so many more big games.
Maybe
really that could be more Heisman games. But you're probably right. Beck's not even in the conversation right now with some of his performances early.
Yeah, and the other part of this is, what if I don't think Bama's pass rush, so I think part of this is a plus for Beck in this game is that this is not the Will Anderson, Dallas Turner pass rushes of previous eras at Alabama. So Beck not being the most mobile of quarterbacks will not be as big of an issue, I think, against Alabama. The problem is I don't know if the run's not there and Alabama's able to limit Georgia running the ball. Does Georgia have the difference makers out wide to keep converting keep their downside? Talk about the scrimmage plays and everything else. This has not been an explosive offense. It's actually been one of the least explosive offenses in football through the first 3 games of Georgia's season. So does that flip on the road at Tuscaloosa? Does Kirby just try and grind it out like Heupel did at Norman, where he's like, we'll win ugly, we'll win with our defense, we'll just find a way to win 19-17, something like that? I don't think that's going to happen. I think people are still just waiting and chalking up Georgia's performance 2 weeks ago in Lexington as like, it happens. It happened at Mizzou. It's happened the last time they were at Kentucky. The difference is I think they had a lot more top-end talent on those previous teams who struggled there. I think every part, like my gut just leans, this is going to be extremely close. I think this is going to be ugly for both quarterbacks. I think this is going to be a defensive fought game, but I also think Bama's just going to make a few more explosive plays. I think they're going to make a few more plays offensively to win this game outright, and we're going to come away. And my gut is coming out of the weekend is like, oh, Georgia has an offensive skill problem. I think the headline coming out of this is Georgia's defense is elite. They're still one of the best in college football, and it travels this, that, and the other, but they don't have the horses to contend with the Bamas and the Tennessees, or Texas really is in their own tier, I think, right now, with their talent out wide. Like, what can Georgia do in the middle of the season to still realistically contend if they don't have any elite difference makers to surround Carson Beck? Because Carson Beck, I think, has looked different this season without Bowers and Ladd McConkey and company to help make his life easier. So my gut is I'm going to go Alabama 20, Georgia 17.
Yeah, I don't hate that. So I'm glad you brought up the Kentucky game, because I think there's some Georgia fans, either they're being dishonest or they're just leaving out context that's much needed. So you had the 2022 performance at Kentucky, 16-6, and that offense ended up averaging 41 points a game and won the national title. Like, that team was elite. The other time in 2020, they won 14-3 at Kentucky. That offense finished 38th in the country in scoring, and they lost 2 games and didn't win the SEC East. So yeah, this might happen every time you go to Kentucky, but it doesn't mean you're a national champion every time you're going to Kentucky. So yeah, it still remains to be seen. I think it's, to this point, there's so few data points. Like, to me, Georgia had the game versus Kentucky and Alabama had the game versus South Florida. Like, South Florida, ran for over 200 yards on Alabama. Like, Kentucky ran for 170. So it wasn't a good performance, even though Georgia still didn't give up a touchdown. South Florida ran for over 200 yards. So I think that's pretty big. And I was looking at Wisconsin. They had 149 yards on 41 carries versus Alabama. Also played basically the entire game without their starting quarterback after the first drive. So that's not ideal. Wisconsin also averaged 4 yards a carry against Western Michigan and South Dakota. So this Wisconsin offense hasn't looked anything great. Clemson, on the other hand, had 46 rushing yards on 23 carries against Georgia. And they've averaged 7.5 yards a carry versus App State and 8.5 yards a carry versus NC State. So I think you could argue, not that I'm even saying Kentucky is a good team. I think you could argue Clemson and Kentucky are both better than anyone that Alabama's played. I think Kentucky, Wisconsin is got Music City Bowl written all over it, like if Kentucky gets to a bowl game. So I'm not saying that they're world beaters or anything, but I think Georgia's had that game against like Alabama made the South Florida game look good by the final scoreline, but we saw it was 21-16 over halfway through the fourth quarter. So that was a close game the entire way. I just look at this Georgia defense. I also, when I was talking about that 2023 SEC championship, I left out the Isaiah Bond fourth down catch that honestly changed the game, a touchdown before the half that just honestly just shouldn't have happened. It should have been a fourth down stop. I just look at this defense that Georgia has, and they limit it. As good as Jalen Milroe is, and I think with Kalen DeBoer's offense, he could be more dynamic. But I think this game kind of shows how the perception of offensive coaches versus defensive coaches. Like, there's people out there that kind of think Alabama could be better with Kalen DeBoer than they were with Nick Saban, the greatest coach of all time. Because of the way people feel about offensive coaches, they're like, oh, the offense could be even better without Saban. I think I trust Kirby more than Kalen DeBoer. I think this team, I think this defense is going to limit the big plays from Jalen Milroe. I think that's ultimately the X factor. If Alabama is if I had to put it down one stat, if Alabama is converting, 50% of their third downs, this game's over. Like, Alabama wins this game easily. So Georgia's got to get off the field on third down, which they actually did a pretty good job of in the SEC championship a year ago. We got to see a better version of Carson Beck than we've seen, I think, through the first few games. So I'm with you. I think it's going to be a pretty low scoring game. I'm going to say Georgia gets it done 24-20 on the road in Tuscaloosa.
Ooh, okay.
And I'll be honest, a week and a half ago, I was ready to pick Alabama on this podcast. I really was. Like, I don't know. The more I've thought about it, I've gone back and forth. It's not going to be an easy one. And who knows? Maybe Kirby is afraid of Alabama, and that's going to be the boogeyman. Mark Richt had to get over the Florida one, and Kirby Smart's going to have to get over Alabama.
Absolutely. Next up here, Matt Green. Oklahoma at Auburn. Auburn, 2.5-point home dogs after getting upset by the Hogs last week. They have 10 total turnovers in their 2 losses to Cal and Arkansas at home. Been a rough week for Hugh Freeze and company. A lot of piling on here. Bo Wallace out here tweeting through it after that game and everything.
Didn't see that coming.
No, it's been a lot of media, a lot of.
Been one of the few people I thought had a good opinion of Hugh Freeze.
It wasn't good. It wasn't good, Matt Green. So people are getting a little angsty in Auburn land on the Plains. Oklahoma obviously gets demolished offensively by Tennessee's defense in front seven at home with Heupel's return on Saturday. 2.5-point line. This is interesting because both, I guess Peyton Thorne is going to be starting for Auburn in this one. Michael Hawkins will get his first start for Oklahoma as a true freshman. This is a coin flip game. OU 12th in defense, I think, for PFF. 3rd in pass rush per PFF. As someone who watched their pass rush get after Nico and company on Saturday, Oklahoma's defense is legit. They may have problems offensively, but the defense is one of the best, and it is SEC ready, in my opinion. Everything about this game just still screams Oklahoma to me. And it's could Auburn really lose another home game here? It feels kind of like Florida State. Auburn feels a little Florida State-y to me, where they got quarterback wrong, and they still have talent objectively, but it just feels like all the pieces aren't working. It seems like they're in a state of season of hell type deal where we really need to change our expectations. I understand Florida State was higher preseason, but not for me on this very podcast where I said 8-4 or 7-5 is way more likely than people are anticipating with this Florida State team. Now I think Auburn is in a similar boat, and Auburn, there's a lot of pressure there. I think people are putting pressure on Venables, which I don't really understand. I'm like, I don't think this is like a Venables has to win this game because he's got Texas next week and this and the other. It's like he beat Texas last year. Like Venables is fine. Like this defense is really good. Like I think people are really overreacting to where Venables is at this point at Oklahoma. But look, Oklahoma, the thing that just makes me most comfortable picking them here outright, they're third in turnover margin in college football right now. It's a good spot to be in if you're going to play the Auburn Tigers, who love giving the ball away through 4 games. So give me Oklahoma, Matt Green. Give me Oklahoma 27, Auburn 20.
Yeah, I'm thinking something similar. We talked about it last week. Auburn has 14 turnovers on the year, worst in the country. Like Oklahoma turned over that good Tennessee offense a couple times last year. Like that Oklahoma defense, or last week, that Oklahoma defense looked really good. And I'm with you. I think they're going to get pressure on Auburn, whoever's playing quarterback. I assume it's Peyton Thorne. How about Peyton Thorne with a little dig at Hank? What was his name?
Hank Brown.
Hank Brown. Yeah, needs to get off his phone, I guess. But yeah, I think it's crazy to think Auburn's already lost 2 home games, and to think of them losing 3 home games in September is wild. But I mean, I think Oklahoma's a better team. I think with Michael Hawkins, I mean, he gave them just a little, Michael Hawkins Jr., I should say, he gave them just a little different dynamic on the offense. So I think I'm going to take Oklahoma as well. I'm going to say 26-17. Like we saw Arkansas win by multiple scores last week. And I think this, like how many times they turned over versus Arkansas? 5? Mm-hmm. And this Oklahoma defense is much better than Arkansas, I think, to this point. So give me Oklahoma 26-17.
We agree. Jerry World, Arkansas Arkansas versus Texas A&M. Texas A&M 3.5-point favorites against the Hogs here, Matt Green. What say you?
So I like what Texas A&M has looked like with Marcel Reed at quarterback. It's just so hard to interpret games against the Florida Gators. Like, I don't know, did they just give up? Like they run for like 300 yards. This run offense looked really good. If you're looking at Arkansas, is Arkansas not offensively, I should say, a better version of Notre Dame? Like they basically have a limited passer, a good run game and a limited passer. And I mean, I think they have maybe the best running back in the SEC this year, maybe best running back in the country so far with Jaquinnon Jackson. And Taylon Green is a lot more dynamic, as good as why am I blanking on his name for Notre Dame? Riley Leonard. As good as he is, like Taylon Green is much more dynamic. So they had trouble stopping that Notre Dame offense. I don't see them having more success with Arkansas. I think Arkansas, it's about, the defense and limiting the turnovers. But I'm feeling the Razorbacks, this Bobby Petrino, Sam Pittman duo. I think Arkansas, and because going down our slate, I don't like the home dogs. This is Jerry World, all right? This is Jerry Jones's home, and the Razorbacks are the dog. So I'm taking Arkansas in a neutral site as my home dog of the week. So give me Arkansas to win this game 30-24.
Wow. So I respect it. That'd be 4-1. I just saw that Arkansas opened as 11-point dogs at home against Tennessee next Saturday. A number that I'm going to guess continues to climb between now and Saturday.
That's a respectable number for Arkansas.
I don't know. 2 touchdown home dogs, I think.
No, I'm saying 11 to a top 5 team. I think that was probably a little bit different before the season started.
That's probably true. I'd have to go back. Like you, I'm kind of curious if Marcel is for real here. He's been really good in filling in for Connor Wegman this year. This is from Texas A&M Athletics Communications. The freshman is the first Aggie quarterback to throw for 2 touchdowns and rush for 80-plus yards in back-to-back games since Johnny Football in 2012. So he's in elite company. Gerard Johnson did it in 2009. Steve McGee. Man, I remember Steve McGee in 2006. Reggie McNeil in 2005 are the other A&M signal callers to do so in the past 30 years. So Marcel, I think, has the juice here. Also, when you go back through this history, Matt Green, it's all A&M in this century. A&M has dominated this game for whatever reason. So curious for that
Arkansas
one.
Win last year, or it was one of the last. I'll look that up.
They won one of the last 4.
They have won recently.
Yeah, and it's just one. And you go back through it, it's not good. It's a lot of, what is that color? Or would we call it maroon? I guess it's maroon, right? Maroon and white.
They're maroon, yeah.
Yeah, dark maroon. It's just dark. I don't know if I call it maroon because like Brookwood was maroon and gold, I think, and it's just a different. I'm like, we can't call these the same color.
Speaking of, hold on, sidebar. We didn't even get into the North Gwinnett beatdown of the Parkview Panthers, sir.
It was a Parkview on Parkview crime here because Eric Godfrey, now the coach of your North Gwinnett Bulldogs. Parkview's having a rough year.
Right?
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
No, I had a buddy of mine. He was like, "Yo, you need to call out Chase Thomas on the podcast." He showed me the box score. I was like, "It's good looking out."
That's messed up, man.
Us North Gwinnett brothers, man. We run deep. You know, we bleed red and black. But anyway,
Bulldogs forever. But you're a Falcon now, man. You need to embrace the navy and gold, sir. You're in Falcon country. I don't have to tell you.
No,
you know what it's like.
Hey, as long as Stafford's in the league, like I'm rooting for Stafford to win a Super Bowl.
I meant the Decula Falcons. No respect for your local team.
Yeah.
Wow. Season ticket holder doesn't even realize where he's at. The season ticket holder for the Decula Falcons.
I don't have any paraphernalia yet to this point, so I'm still a North Gwinnett fan until then.
But Arkansas is a top 7 running team, and Taylor Green's been really good. So this game strikes me as a souped up version of what Arkansas had to face against Oklahoma State, right? Where I think Reed is going to provide a lot of issues for this Arkansas defense. I'm not a believer in this Arkansas defense. I think our A&M's going to be able to run on them. I also think the fact that Petrino and company has put up the yardage, but the points haven't necessarily been there. There's a lot going right for Arkansas, but you also saw they really blew that game against Oklahoma State a couple weeks ago, and they could easily be undefeated right now. I think that's going to pop up again here, where I think we're going to look at the box score after this game, and it's going to be like Arkansas outgained A&M by 200 yards. And somehow Arkansas lost this game because they turned it over 2 more times than A&M did. I just think Elko is going to manage this game better than Pittman, and they're going to find a way in Jerry World. So give me A&M 31, Arkansas 27.
All right, put it on the board.
Next up, Oklahoma State at Kansas State, where the home Little Apple Wildcats are 4.5-point home favorites, Matt Green.
Yeah, both of these teams obviously coming off losses from last week. Some beat down more than others, but both basically beat down. I think Kansas State was much more shocking going into BYU and losing the way they did. But like we were talking about, it didn't feel like they got blown out only because it was just this like 6-minute window where the game just got out of control. So I think that reason, and Oklahoma State is are there 12 teams? How many we got? 14, 16 in the Big 12?
I think it's 14, right?
Because they lost 2, gained 4. Is that what they did? So 14th ranked run defense, last, whatever you want to call them, in the Big 12 this year. I think that's going to be what it comes down to. Like, this Kansas State team wants to run the ball, and Oklahoma State has not stopped anybody at home. I think Kansas State gets it done. I'm going to say Kansas State by 2 scores. I'm going to say 34-20. Kansas State gets this one done.
Wow. I've been going back and forth on this one. This is another tough one where both are coming off really embarrassing losses. Oklahoma State at home, Kansas State on the road at BYU. We talked about it. Kansas State just had 6 bad minutes, and it ended up leading to a blowout. But outside of that, it was a very weird game that just does not happen if you play it 100 times you play it 100 times. Bowman got benched last week and going into the second half. Then he stormed back and ended on a high note, and they almost went ahead and stole that game against Utah. Oklahoma State has won 4 of the last 5 in this series, Matt Green. They lost 48-0 the last time they were at Kansas State 2 years ago. Gundy, per Phil Steele here in his annual, 4-6 on the road in the last 2 seasons. But he has been better as an away dog than away as a home favorite. So I don't know. I think, to me, I went back and forth on this one, Matt Green. I think Avery Johnson, I don't know. I think Oklahoma State figures some stuff out. Like we talked about, Ollie Gordon has not been the Ollie Gordon that we expected through the first part of the season. Alan Bowman's not a perfect quarterback, but I think this is going to sound weird, but I trust this Oklahoma State team and Bowman to bounce back, and they figured some stuff out late against Utah. I think there's a reason we still had this team as the preseason Big 12 title co-favorites with Utah, and I think they're gonna right the ship here a little bit. This is bad timing for Kansas State because I think Avery Johnson's still figuring some stuff out as a new starter, and I think Oklahoma State's just gonna go into the Little Apple and win this game. I think they have to have it if they want to stay in the Big 12 title race and they want to be one of those 4 teams that get a bye come December. They need to win this game. Like, this is a sneaky must win for Oklahoma State far more than Kansas State. I'm going to go Oklahoma State 31, Kansas State 24. I think this is a fun, close game, but I think Oklahoma State surprises some folks and wins at Kansas State this weekend.
All right, put it on the board.
All right, sir. We are going to Louisville at Notre Dame. Another sneaky great game here. I think Notre Dame's wearing the green jerseys on this one on Peacock. Notre Dame Fighting Irish 6.5 point favorites at home against the Cardinals. What say you, Matt Green?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one to me. I think we got 2 good defenses in this game, and you know when you see those posts on social media, like after somebody loses, like they went to Madden and took out their frustration and beat someone like 200-0. I feel like that's what Notre Dame did to Purdue. It was just like they just kept scoring and scoring and scoring. They had to get that Northern Illinois loss out of their system. I had questions about Louisville going into last week, and you can say they were answered or not. Georgia Tech, you can have different opinions on how respectable they are, but I felt like it was a good win they had a week ago. I still think this offense, it needs to be better, but it's kind of how I feel with Notre Dame as well. So I think just at home, I think I just trust Notre Dame more, but I think this is going to be like a first 1-20 wins this game. So I'm going to take Notre Dame 20-17, and they get it done at home.
Low scoring.
That's not covering, right? That's okay. So I'm taking Notre Dame, but Louisville against the spread.
Okay. I tend to agree here. I think the last time they played, it was 12-7 in favor of Notre Dame several years ago. 2020. Yeah, they won 12-7. I think this is right. Riley Leonard still has not thrown a touchdown pass, Matt Green.
Is that right? I thought he was at 1.
Does he have 1 now?
I thought it was 1-2, I think is what I saw.
Hold on. Let me see here. We got to get this right. He has 1 TD pass. 2 picks. Completing 60% of his passes against AP top 25 teams. It's not been good, sir. It's not been good. And he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass against a ranked team. We can throw that one out there. He'll face one here. And one of the best in Louisville. Jeff Brom just doesn't matter. Like I've said, the dude, here's a tip for like Hugh Freeze or any like team that's in the market for a transfer portal quarterback. If Jeff Brom's interested and Louisville's pushing, go ahead and go after that guy. Tyler Shook comes in, fine. He's locked and loaded. Louisville's right there. Last year was Jack Plummer, who was on his 3rd team. He does a great job for Louisville last year. They're in the ACC title game. Like, if Brom's in on him, maybe jump after him. Like, Brom is just, I think, too good because you can't win a title at Louisville. I'd be curious where he might wind up in a couple years if he keeps this thing humming. But I think he's one of the sneakiest, best coaches in the sport right now. And I think they had the edge in this game in terms of Brom versus Freeman. Cards are number 3 in scoring offense in the ACC, Matt Green. They're number 8 in offense as a whole per PFF. They're 15th in defense, so they're a borderline they are a top 15 offense and defense in college football right now. They don't feel like it nationally. They're not getting that kind of love. They have a lot of big plays.
Anybody though.
Yeah, but they have a lot of big plays, like 40, 50-yard plays, but not really any in the intermediate in that 10 to 20 range. So that's kind of concerning, is that they're relying on the big play a little bit too much. Here's the stat that I think will ultimately doom the Cardinals, though, here on the road in South Bend. Notre Dame is 6th in opposing quarterback rating. Notre Dame secondary is one of the best in the country. Notre Dame's pass coverage is just one of the best in the country. I think they swallow up and give Louisville a lot of problems. passing the ball. I don't think Louisville's going to be able to have those kind of downfield shots and play the style they want to play against Notre Dame. I think it's just a bad matchup for them. I think Louisville's still maybe a 10-2 team again, but I think this is where they fall. And Notre Dame gets up for this one. So Notre Dame still, if you lose this one, Notre Dame's out of the CFP discussion, I think. So give me Notre Dame at home, and I think they cover. I think this is just a grueling game for Louisville. Give me Notre Dame 24, Louisville 10.
Okay, put it on the board.
All right, sir. Let's go to Illinois at Penn State, sir. Penn State, 19-point home favorites. What say you?
So people are going to see the Illinois Fighting Illini, and they're going to be like, this team's sneaky. They've been really good this year. But what I'm working on a new nickname here for the Penn State Nittany Lions. I got the alliteration, so it might work. The properly rated Penn State Nittany Lions. That should be their name. That should be their nickname. Don't confuse it. They're not better than the elites, and they're not worse than the bad teams. They're properly rated. They're going up against a team that's inferior. Penn State's going to blow out Illinois. This is going to be a blowout. I'm going to say 31-10. Penn State is going to take them to the woodshed. And then people are going to be like, oh, is Penn State a Big Ten title contender? No, they're not. They're not going to win the Big Ten. But they're better than the teams that they're better than. And they're not an elite team. So we don't have to think about it too hard. But Penn State, like Iowa last year, like Iowa's a good team, but Penn State, put a 40 spot on them? Like they destroyed Iowa. So I think Penn State just is a good team. We just kind of forget because we see some of these ugly games against Michigan, Ohio State that no, they'll score points on teams that they're better than. So, and this defense looks really good still. I'm going to take Penn State to win in a blowout. Give me Penn State with the points.
I think they still have a chance. There's still some troubling signs to the Ohio State, and we'll get into them in just a second here. In terms of not troubling like the season's falling, but just they're a lot more gettable than I think people are throwing out there right now. Penn State 19-point spread is huge. I mean, Illinois is undefeated, just beat Nebraska, and 19-point road dogs is tough spot to be in. But Penn State 16th in rush defense. They're 9th in offense. They're kind of like what I said with Louisville, where they're in that top 15 on both sides of the ball and don't really feel like it nationally. They're 9-2 all time, or 9-2 at home against Illinois in their last 11 games. Do you remember that 9 overtime game they had in 2021, Matt Green? And Penn State lost that game to Illinois. So that was an upset 3 years ago.
Yeah, the 2-point conversions and all that. Yeah, that was terrible.
You were really mad about that. I remember us talking about the game. You were not happy.
LSU A&M.
Yeah.
Because the LSU A&M 7 overtime, that game was incredible. This 9 straight 2-point conversions, whatever it was. Oh, that was so bad. I hated watching that.
Can I go ahead and say, it's funny that you're growing more cynical because you've been burned before by the Penn State Nittany Lions. I think they're the most complete team in the Big Ten right now, Matt Green.
Oh!
Drew Aller leads the Big Ten in yards per attempt. He's averaging 12.2 yards per attempt, Matt Green. Like, he's throwing downfield. This Penn State offense with Koltanecki, or however you pronounce it, the Kansas OC, it's a different type of offense. You have a 5-star Singleton back there. The receiving core is just fine. You have a top 15, borderline top 10 defense. I think this is, like you said, I think this is a statement game, and they just continue to roll down the hill here and keep it moving. Give me Penn State 42, Illinois 19.
Just remember I warned you, sir. They'll look good in this one, but just remember these Nittany Lions down the road. Properly rated Nittany Lions. Minnesota at Michigan. The Wolverines are 9-point home favorites against the Gophers. Matt Green, what say you? The little brown jug, sir. It's been a while for the Minnesota Golden Gophers in this rivalry. Do you know when the last win they had in this rivalry was?
I mean, I was going through it. I like going through these in our previews. I think Phil Steele had, the Wolverines I know from Phil Steele are 34-3 since 78. So how long?
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's actually not as long as I thought, 2014, but I guess because they don't play this game every year. I would think that when you got a trophy, you're playing this game every year. But no, they've won. Michigan's won 4 straight. So the 5th game goes back to 2014. But yeah, like you're saying, Minnesota has 2 wins in this rivalry since we were alive. And I don't know, like Michigan played the perfect game against USC a week ago. So I think that's going to build a lot of confidence. I think there's not a lot of room for error if you're just going to be pounding the rock and throwing the ball like 12 times. But I think against someone like Minnesota, like if it can work against USC, I think it should work even better against Minnesota. So I'm going to take Michigan to win this one. Like we saw Iowa, handle Minnesota, pretty easily last week. So I'm going to take Michigan to win this one. What's the spread? It's like 2 touchdowns? No, 9? Oh, yeah. I'm going to take Michigan. I'm going to say like 24 to 7. Michigan gets this one done.
I tend to agree. Also, it's kind of forgotten. Michigan has won 26 straight Big Ten games, Matt Green?
Because it doesn't look the same as the Harbaugh era. I think that's why it got forgotten.
But it isn't really talked about. I'm like, Michigan hasn't lost a Big Ten game in forever. Like, the streak's continuing. They lost to Texas, but they beat USC, which is weird that that's a conference win for them. But I think they keep that streak going for a little while here, sir. Obviously, I haven't lost to Ohio State in the last 3 meetings, but it's kind of a sneaky, impressive run here, Matt Green, that the Michigan Wolverines continue to take care of business against their conference foes. And I think with Alex Orji and company, they figured out their identity offensively. They're going to be okay. And I think they run the ball down Minnesota's throat. Minnesota just doesn't have the playmakers out wide and the offense, unfortunately, to really pull off an upset in Ann Arbor, in my estimation. So give me Michigan 34, Minnesota 7.
All right. We agree there, sir.
Ohio State at Michigan State, 24-point road favorites here for the Buckeyes. What say you, sir?
Well, I went on my whole rant about Ohio State last week and this just awful schedule we've seen so far for the first 3 games. Michigan State, they've beaten Ohio State a few times. I say recent history. It's been a while, but they have not. Every time they've won was either they won the Big Ten championship one year and they've won in Columbus a couple times. They haven't won in East Lansing since 1999. So I thought that was pretty interesting. These 2 teams are playing every year. I want to say, right? They're playing every year. And who was on the sidelines for the Spartans in 1999?
1999.
You absolutely
Saban?
Do, sir. That was one and only Nick Saban. So with all due respect to Jonathan Smith, he is I've met Nick Saban, sir, and you, sir, are no Nick Saban. Also, I have not met Nick Saban. It's not important right now. But Michigan State, I don't know what Ohio State is to this point. I just assume we know they have NFL talent all over the roster. So it feels like the first game against legit Big Ten competition, like they're going to come out on a mission. So I've not been impressed with Michigan State so far this year. Aiden Childs has been turning the ball over a little bit too much. I think I'm going to go Ohio State to win this one easy. Put up like a 40 spot. Give me Ohio State 41, Michigan State 14.
I tend to agree with you here as well, Matt Green. Michigan State lost 8 straight to the Buckeyes. Ohio State's second in pass yards per game in the Big Ten to this point, but they're still the 45th passing offense per PFF. Their identity has been running the ball. Two-headed monster between Henderson and Judkins has been their bread and butter. That 1-2 punch is living up to the hype there. So they're a running team. They obviously have the superstar freshman receiver in Jeremiah Smith, and they got Carnell Tate, and they've got Ibuka still. So they still have a lot of talent out wide. But Will Howard is quietly just not a Heisman type guy. Like, he's not like an elite quarterback, and still I don't know if I want to say shaky, but he's not. It's weird because Ohio State used to have these guys. Like, he's very Craig Krenzel-y, Matt Green. He's not Justin Zwick, which is, you don't want to be in the Zwick zone.
Is he Todd Beckman?
Yeah, like, it's just, we grew up, like, our youth we saw these kind of quarterbacks at Ohio State. We haven't seen them in a long time, like somebody like Will Howard here. So maybe he can still guide Ohio State where they want to be. But I'm still I've penciled that one in. I'm like, I don't know if Will Howard can win 3 straight important games in the playoffs where he has to outduel some Heisman type quarterbacks. And I just had it in the back pocket. It's not going to come up here though. Ultimately, he took one deep shot against Marshall I saw last week, and he was picked off. So he took one downfield shot, and it was an interception for the Thundering Herd. So I don't know. I think they're going to run the ball down Michigan State's throat in this game, but I don't think it's going to be a boring slugfest. And I don't know. I think Will Howard doesn't have great stats again. So give me Ohio State 24, Michigan State 6.
Oh, wow. Okay. So taking the Spartans to cover.
Out at home, I think they'll get up for this one a little bit. And I think there's still just something off about Ohio State and Will Howard. Colorado at UCF, the Golden Knights. Now just the Knights, but I'm still going to call them the Golden Knights. 14.5 home favorites over the Buffs. What say you?
This number seemed too high to me. Like, I know Colorado is just this kind of volatile team. It feels like we don't really know what to expect week in and week out. Is UCF as good as Nebraska? Are they better than Nebraska?
I think they're better.
That could be interesting. I don't know. I think I trust this Colorado offense to just be in any game they play. But so the 14 just seems too high to me. But yeah, UCF, I'm curious to see UCF. You know, that TCU win, like, just kind of pulled that one out at the end. Like, that was a really kind of a miracle victory. So I don't know if I'm like buying the stock that they're like one of the contenders in the Big 12 just yet. But I think they're better than Colorado. So give me UCF 35, Colorado 30.
You have them covering here, Matt Green.
No, not covering, because I'm saying 35-30. I'm saying they're
covering.
Points.
It's a 14.5 point
spread.
Colorado. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think so. So this is a bad matchup for Colorado. This can be a bad uniform game because they're the exact same and they both have gold helmet. I hope Colorado's wearing.
That's funny. I almost started with that. I'm really curious to see what uniforms they're wearing because this could look like a scrimmage.
Yeah, someone's going to have to wear some very different alternate uniforms in this game.
Maybe Colorado gets to bust out the icy whites that they didn't get to wear last week.
Yeah, it might be wise to do that in this one. This is UCF's big moment. I think they're right now the favorite to win the Big 12, and they need this game at home. This is their first. They haven't really played anybody either, so this is a big game for them. It's just easy to overlook. Colorado should have lost to Baylor last week. Baylor's not a good team, and Dave Aranda probably headed towards getting fired. This was a bad game for the Buffs, and they barely escaped that win over one of the worst teams in the Big 12 with a Hail Mary from Shador, which was a dart and a great throw from Shador, but they were in a really tough spot they should not have been in against Baylor. Number one rush offense in the Big 12 goes to the UCF. Colorado has the worst rushing offense in the Big 12. UCF has the best rushing defense in the Big 12. Colorado has one of the worst rushing defenses in the Big 12. This is just everything I've looked at from this game just screams this is a terrible matchup. Like, UCF can play ball control, similar to what North Dakota State did in that first game, just on a much better level with KJ Jefferson and company. I think this is awful for Colorado. I think this is going to get ugly. Colorado 85th in pass blocking per PFF. UCF is number one in the country in long rushing plays. I think this is going to be a nightmare scenario from Colorado because I think UCF's going to keep the ball, keep possession, run it down Colorado's throats, and it's just going to be a souped-up version of what you saw against North Dakota State, but it's at UCF. They're going to have the home crowd rocking. I think this is actually going to be a sneaky, ugly game for the Buffs. So give me UCF 37. No, give me UCF 40. Colorado 20.
Said 40-20.
Yeah.
All right, put it on the board. How's your Missouli?
There you go. Kentucky at Ole Miss. Ole Miss 18.5 point home favorites. What say you, sir?
I think Ole Miss would be lucky to go into Lexington and pull out. No, they're at home.
They're at home.
No, I'm not going to pretend Kentucky's a good team because they played Georgia close. But the most important thing I'm going to do is completely ignore that this team is averaging like 61 points per game because I think it's totally irrelevant. Like, I've been waiting on Ole Miss to play someone this year, and I think Kentucky. You saw what their game plan is versus Georgia. That was it, going basically perfectly. Other than scoring any touchdowns, like to just hold on to the ball and just keep the other team's defense off, or the other team's offense off the field. I think Georgia's defense is better than Ole Miss. I don't know that. I think Ole Miss made some good additions in the portal and everything, but I still feel confident Georgia's defense is better. I think Kentucky is going to be able to keep the ball enough to not lose by 18.5 points. Put it that way. So I think Ole Miss fans are going to be frustrated. Could be like Tennessee fans were a week ago. Like, oh man, when we play someone with a pulse, it's completely different. I think Ole Miss is going to win this easily, but I'm going to say it's like 27-10. And I think Kentucky actually covers in this one.
Interesting.
I'm not buying this offense yet. I need to see it versus a legitimate opponent. And Kentucky's not even that, but they're an SEC team.
Their front seven's legitimate. Like, I think there's
true.
NFL guys in that front seven. So, I mean, Walker and company, like, the defense is legit, I think, at Kentucky. So, like you said, this will be a legitimate defense that Mississippi will be going up against here. Here's the problem, and this will be the story of the game. Here's why this game will not be close, Matt Green. Ole Miss has the number one pass rush in college football. The best passing offense in college football. Do they, though? Yeah, Walter Nolan and company have done really well. Like, this pass rush.
They've done well against Georgia Southern.
I'm just saying, like, even if they're not better than Tennessee or they're not better, like, they're somewhere in that top 5. Like, we can get into semantics, but they're one of the best pass rushing teams in college football. Kentucky is 122nd in pass blocking. This is going to be a disaster in terms of the Ole Miss front versus Kentucky's front. Brock Vandagriff's going to be running for his life all over again. UK, they're 112th in quarterback rating in FBS. You are not going to be able to hold up. Like, yeah, you might stop Ole Miss a little bit more than anybody else has to this point, but Ole Miss is going to get theirs. Ole Miss is going to drop 30 plus. Kentucky can't sniff 30 plus. The reason they were in that game against Georgia is they were able to keep that game low scoring. I don't think that's going to happen on the road at Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss, even if you have some questions about their offense, like, it's still one of the best in college football. And I think that this matchup just screams blowout. So give me Ole Miss 48.
Ooh.
Kentucky 13.
All right.
This is going to be ugly. Like, do we see like the Mac Brown post? Never mind. I'm not even going to say it.
What's that?
A couple things before we go real quick. Washington on Friday night, Matt Green at Rutgers. Love this game. I think this is going to be awesome. Greg Schiano hosting.
Big Rutgers guy.
Are you
disappointed they didn't get Schiano? I feel like Tennessee fans rioted when they were going to hire Schiano, didn't they? You love him.
Yeah, that's a who knows? That was a long time ago, Matt Green. Washington at Rutgers, 2.5 point home favorites, sir. What say you?
Yeah, I know people are respecting Rutgers these days. A couple close wins. I'm not really sure what to expect from this Washington offense. It definitely hasn't looked as explosive as it did a year ago. Lost to Washington State earlier this year. I guess I'm feeling Rutgers. I don't think it's high scoring, but I'm gonna say Rutgers wins and covers. So give me Rutgers like 23-20. They find a way to win this game.
Rutgers is winning double-digit games, I think.
Oh.
Rutgers is what people thought Nebraska was going to be this year. They got the wrong red team. Washington losing to Washington State last week in the Apple Cup. They got some problems. UW, I think, is going to be fine. Like Jed Fish and company, like, it's good staff. They're going to get there. But it's a gap year. This is 6-6 type Washington team. I think they're going to drop this game on the road on Friday night. It's going to be rocking at Rutgers. Give me the Rutgers Scarlet Knights to win. Let's go 2017 and barely cover. However, the broader point that I'm more interested in, they go to Nebraska the next Saturday. So they get a week and a day to prepare for that one. Wisconsin at home, UCLA at home, at USC, Minnesota at home, at Maryland, Illinois at home, at Michigan State. They're going to be right there, Matt Green. Rutgers is going to be banging at the door at 10-2, 9-3 this season. They have one of the best running backs in college football. They have an identity. They're recruiting well in this cycle. If I don't know if folks have seen that a little bit. So I don't know. I'm buying up a lot of Scarlet Knights stock right now, Matt Green. So give me Rutgers to win here, and just don't be surprised if Rutgers' record is going to surprise you come November. You're like, wait, what is Rutgers? I think a lot of college football fans are going to be surprised.
Sneaky double-digit team. Double-digit win team.
Final one quickly here as we wrap up here today, Matt Green. Arizona at Utah. The Utes, 11-point home favorites. What say you?
I don't like Utah beating anybody by 11, to be honest, even though they did beat Baylor by exactly 11 earlier this season. But that's not important right now. I like this Arizona offense, but I think they've just been chomping at the bit after that blowout loss to Kansas State, having to go to a bye week right after that. So I think Arizona makes some adjustments, even though I think this Utah defense is better than Kansas State's defense. I think Utah's probably got the best defense in the Big 12 this year. But I think Arizona wins it close, and I just don't like their offense enough. Utah, is Cam Rising playing this week? I don't even really know. I don't know that it matters.
Who knows?
But I'm going to take Utah by 10. So give me Arizona to actually cover the spread. But I'm going to take Utah 27, Arizona 17.
Arizona, I think they're going to win their fair share. Brent Brennan, we talked about, we're rooting for him, but my biggest concern was like the record against ranked teams was not good for Brent Brennan as a whole as a head coach. I didn't like him on the road in these spots. Like at Kansas State 2 weeks ago was a nightmare situation for them. I just think that's how it's going to go. I think Arizona's going to beat who they should. Like Noah Fida and company and McMillan are going to put up their numbers. I just think they're going to get blasted by these good teams in the Big 12. I think that's just going to be the story of the season where people were like, oh, maybe. It's like, I don't think so. I think they're going to get dominated in these big spots. So I think that continues here. I think Utah wins and covers, and it's a lot easier. They can breathe a lot easier than they did on the road at Oklahoma State. Give me Utah 34, Arizona 13.
34. Offensive explosion for the Utes.
At home. Utes will be fine at home.
All right, good stuff, sir. We got a few disagreements. We got Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas A&M, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. I think those are all the disagreements. We got win-loss. It's a couple against the spread that we disagree on, but yeah, should be a good week, sir. We got some nice appetizers at noon and 3:30 before the main dish. Georgia, Alabama, 7:30.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is all we've got, Matt Green. We'll be back Sunday to talk all things week 5 here in the college football slate from this weekend. So it should be fun. Good luck to you, sir. In Tuscaloosa, I will not have a take, or I will be able to be a neutral observer on Saturday with Tennessee not playing.
I'm sure I won't get a text at the end of the first quarter. Chase Thomas, big first quarter guy.
Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to you very soon.
Yes.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.